is best practices around usage of MFTF suites. So I'll pass the ball to Kevin, and he'll be presenting it.
Sounds good. Let me just get my environment up and ready. And we're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen though. And PowerPoint. All right, cool. Yeah, so like Sumia said, the topic today is MFTF suites and using suites. And I want this to be a guide covering basically what suites are, when to use them, and then how to best use them. Try to replicate what we have going on internally, which is a pretty good usage of suites. Yeah, the goal. With an ever-increasing number of MFTF tests, it's important to have a mechanism to organize and consolidate them for ease of use. The more tests there are, the harder it is to tell what I need to run when, and suites are the best way to accomplish that. So what is a suite? It's a collection of MFTF tests that allows for grouping of pre- and post-conditions for a set of, or the included set of tests, and you can determine what tests are in the suite via inclusion, exclusion, groups, and modules. Just a quick background on the history of suites in MFTF. First introduced in 2.2.0, then further enhanced to be able to reference data created in the before block of suites in the middle of the test, right? So if you create data, like if you create a product in the beginning of a suite for use in every single one of your tests, you can refer to that test, that product's data. And 2.4.3, the ability to run tests in suites within the scope of suites, which should be familiar to anybody who tried to make use of suites and would always get the tests must be included in suite configuration error, whatever it was called. So the contents of the suite. You see in the suite sample here, we have a before block. This is the precondition. The after block, which is the post condition. The inclusion block, which tells the suite what is included as a part of the suite. And then the exclusion block, which allows you to basically filter out a subset of what's included here. In this example would be the specific test that comes from the catalog module, very likely. So once include the entire catalog modules worth of tests, but exclude this test. And also exclude inside the catalog this file name right here. So with that many different ways of including and excluding, what's the best way to go about determining what a suite's contents are? So we found internally throughout its use and throughout its lifetime that groups are actually the absolute best way of determining what should and shouldn't be included in a suite, right? So when I say groups, I mean, we have this test right here. I'll go ahead and minimize this stuff on the side. We have test 1 and test 2 over here. I mean this group tag right here. The best way to think about what a group tag is versus a suite, the group tag is literally that. It's a tag. It allows you to tag test 1 with group A, so that anytime you mention group A, test 1 is included as a part of the subset, right? I have a suite A right here. I have these several different include blocks, and all of them work. I can either do test 1 like this. I can do the module named devdocs, which is where this test 1 lives under. Or I can do group A. So why are groups the best way of including tests in a suite? Well, internally, let's say we have a minimum green suite. And the minimum green suite in just bare CE contains 10 tests or so. If we have another extension that we want tests from that extension to be considered part of the minimum green suite, we can't refer to those tests by name here, right? Because this suite on base CE will not know that the extension exists. It shouldn't know that the extension's tests exist necessarily. So then how do you create that linkage? Just by grouping. So if for some reason test 2 right here is part of my minimum green suite, but it's a part of an extension, if I just tag it with group A, just like this, if the extension is loaded, this test will be read and it will be added to the suite that exists in the CE repository. So grouping makes it so that it's really flexible and basically you can add or remove tests much more easily from the suite rather than including them by name or something like that. Also, this inclusion block would get ridiculously big if you included tests specifically by name. So those are the contents of the suite. Creating a suite. So this is where they should live. If it has cross-module references, it should be defined under Magento 2 root def test acceptance test, and then this underscore suite right here. This could pretty much be considered a deprecated path because no one is able to push these suites in, right? And if they have cross-module references, it makes them really tricky because if the module isn't loaded, then the suite's going to say, I can't find a couple of my tests. Or if neither of the modules are loaded, the suite still exists, it's still read in, but then it'll just say, hey, the suite is empty, why do I exist? Instead, they should generally be put under module test MFTF suite. So this is a sibling directory to all of the normal MFTF directories. Again, even it can reference a single module, or it can reference a group, which can be other modules that are or are not read in based on what's actually loaded in the Magento instance. That's the reason why the grouping is so important. You can still check in the suite under backend or the lowest common denominator module, so that it's there for use in all the further modules. And generated tests from suites are output under def test acceptance, test functional Magento, functional test generated, and then suite name. This is not a directory you guys should be having to mess around with directly too much. If MFTF is doing its job, it should stay hidden kind of in the back end since everything else is abstracted out on top of it. So MFTF suite commands. Generate all the tests within a specific suite. It's just a generate suite name. And this brackets right here means that this command accepts multiple suites names. And I'll show off running all of these, show off this functionality here in a little bit. Run all tests within a suite is run group and then the suite name. This run group right here is a misnomer and something that we intend on fixing sooner than later so that it's not confused with the group tag. So bear with us for a little bit. And run test within a suite's context. So you can just say run test A, and then it'll generate it as part of the suite. And I'm going to go ahead and show that off right now. I have test 1, group A. I have suite A includes group A, right? So I can do bin MFTF run test, then test 1. We'll see that what will happen is test 1 is going to be running under suite A right there. It's a lot of scrolling text, but I'll just scroll back up to show you guys what's happening. We see beginning of execution of suite A before block, then beginning execution of suite A complete. Test 1 block, which is the single comment that I had in here. And then the after block being run right here. So you can do run test just like this. If the test exists in both groups or more than one suite, what will actually happen is that it will run the test in every suite possible, because just by telling it, I want to run test 1, and if test run exists in multiple suites, there's no way that MFTF can find out magically which context you want it to run in, because there might be different suite preconditions between suite A and suite B that alter the Magento state in specific conditions, right? So you need to be able, it needs to be able to run them all. The good news is, and not included in this PowerPoint deck, something that we have coming up is this, which I think is already merged to our developed branch, and we'll properly demo the whole thing. But you guys can see the syntax of it was suite : test 1, and even though it exists in suite B is not being run here. Again, more on that whenever we demo the stuff next week, but just a sneak peek at some new functionality. So here's a little bit of a visual of what happens whenever you run tests in the scope of a suite, right? So since it can run tests within the scopes of the suite, you just do run test A. The suite A before happens, then tests inside the suite are executed, and then the suite A after block happens, much like I just showed you guys. So when tests are located in multiple suites and you just do run test A and run test B, you can see test A is part of 2 suites, test B is part of suite A only. What will happen is this will execute before suite A before, test A will execute, test B will execute, and then suite A is done executing. Move on to the next appearance of test A is in suite B, so then it does the before, the test, and then the after. It's basically wanting to point out that suites will never collide with one another. You won't have you will never have another suite's preconditions kind of executing in the middle of an existing suite. Essentially, the whole suite needs to be done before any further executions of other suites or other tests can be executed. So here's a fairly big point. When do I use suites? Right? It's basically these three different points. To organize tests that need Magento to be configured in a specific way, say something like switching to developer mode or switching to production mode or any other configuration like that. And multiple tests are going to be doing it. You want to save time instead of setting it up and then cleaning up and then setting it up and cleaning up. You can just do it once, run multiple tests, save some time, and optimize. Conditions are executed once per suite. Again, not a crazy concept. They're just done once before and once after. And then it optimizes execution time. That's pretty much it for the demo portion. I was going to show off some other functionality here on how suites execute, like inclusion of suites by module. This is an interesting one. I'm just going to do bin MFTF, run group, and then suite A. Again, run group, bear with us, we'll fix it. And you can see that both the tests inside, these are the only two tests that live inside the DevDocs module on my local. Both the tests were executed. Preconditions, test 1, test 2, post conditions, and then we're done. And lastly, just to show everybody that it indeed does work. Run test 1, run group suite A. We're going to see that only test 1 is being run as a direct result of calling that command. Yep, here we are. But yes, does anybody have any questions regarding suites? Anything that we can maybe answer or have discussions about using suites in here or on Blue Jeans? We'll just double check the chat. Does not look like it, for the time being at least. Well, if anybody has any questions on suites internally, we're going to be using them a lot more coming up soon, and it would be good for everybody to be kind of on the same page as to their use. And it can be a bit confusing because it's not obvious necessarily when to use one suite versus another suite versus creating a new suite, and which mechanisms to put in the before and after. It's certainly something that takes a little bit to get used to, but we're more than happy to help and guide anybody who's interested in writing tests.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. So if we don't have any questions, we'll wrap things up here. Thanks for joining. See you all next time. Bye.